Okay, we're on. We should be on live on both Facebook live stream and YouTube, Florida You Judge. So Haiti Oropesa for Florida You Judge, and with me my co-host, attorney Michelle Lambo. It's good seeing you again, Gary.
Very nice to see you, Haiti, and Michelle as well.
And so we wanted to take some time out today from our very busy schedule to do a public service of interviewing one of Hillsborough County's candidates for, is it Circuit Court?
Circuit Court Judge Group 31.
Okay, great. And so who's the other candidate in that race?
There are two candidates in that race.
One of them is Greg Green, right?
That is correct.
And then, yeah, I don't know who the other one is, but in any event, tell us a little bit about yourself to start off this interview.
Well, great. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I grew up in Tampa since I was 2 years old. Attended Gorey, Wilson, and Plant. Fortunate to have my brother and sister and my mother all in Tampa. And so my dad was Tampa's first periodontist. My mom taught American history at Plant High School and education at the University of Tampa. My mom was very active in the late 60s and early 70s in helping desegregate the public schools in Hillsborough County. So I'm very proud of my family's legacy in the civil rights movement. I went to college at Emory University, got my undergraduate degree in accounting, went to University of Florida for law school, started out my career as a prosecutor, then I was a public defender, and I have run my own successful private practice for 27 years. I'm a board certified expert in marital and family law, one of only 28 in Hillsborough County. And I have experience on both sides of the criminal courtroom. I'm a Supreme Court certified family mediator and an author of Temporary Relief in the Florida Dissolution of Marriage book, which is relied upon by judges and lawyers across the state of Florida.
So, and if you were elected, where would you want to start off?
Well, my number one choice would obviously be family law because I would be one of the few judges elected in the state of Florida who's board certified in marital and family law. We do not have anyone currently serving on the family bench who is board certified. Many judges get placed there initially and it's not their first choice. I'm one. I wouldn't be there because it's my first choice. I would be there probably because it's everyone else's last choice. But I have also, having the experience on both sides of the criminal courtroom, would welcome the opportunity to serve there someday. I was assigned to the juvenile division when I was a public defender. I handled court-appointed dependency cases, so I have experience in that area. So I've had exposure in all areas of circuit court, but my top two would be family law and criminal.
So I'm going to ask you one last question before I turn it over to my co-host, Michelle Lamb. Why do you want to be a judge?
I was inspired to be a judge when the late Harry Lee Coe came to my American history class at Plant High School and talked to the class about being a judge. At that time, I was on the Plant High School tennis team, proud to be part of an undefeated Western Conference championship team. And Judge Coe was formerly the #1 ranked player in the city of Tampa. So we began a relationship of playing tennis that started in high school and lasted until his untimely death. And when I got to play tennis with him, he would talk to me about being a judge. And when I was sworn into the bar, he swore me in. And I remember as a beginning public defender, him allowing me to sit up on the bench with him on my first day. And all the veteran attorneys in the courtroom were like, who's that sitting up on the bench with Judge Coe? And so he inspired me. I also was inspired by Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. I was able to meet.
Hold on a second. Does anybody have there? I hear a little bit of feedback. Gary, do you have, are you listening to yourself on a device, this interview?
I am not. I am not.
How about you? Is that you, Michelle?
That I don't know. Let me.
Well, I'm going to just mute you just for a second. Mute.
Better.
Okay, yes. All right. You were saying Sandra Day O'Connor. What were you saying, Gary?
I met Sandra Day O'Connor when I was in college at Emory, and she invited me to her chambers in Washington, D.C. She told me the story of how she graduated #2 from Stanford Law School, and Justice Rehnquist graduated #1. He was able to get every job. She didn't get hired by anyone. And so she told me when one door closes, another opens. And so we talked about law and judging, and I would see her over the years, and so she was an inspiration to me. And I want to be a judge because I've dedicated my career to helping children and families, and I want to be able to do that on the bench as well. And it's been a career goal of mine since I started, and since I met Judge Coe in high school. And I hope that when I'm a judge, that I can inspire someone like he did for me.
Michelle?
Yes.
You want to ask anything?
Yes. You indicated that you were a former prosecutor as well as a former public defender. During your tenure as a prosecutor and assistant public defender, how many jury trials did you conduct as either first chair or second chair?
I was first chair in, I believe, 14 jury trials. And we're going back to 30 years ago when I started practicing. So it could be a few extra, but being conservative, I know that at a minimum I had 14 jury trials. But prepared, as you know, as a prosecutor, I don't know how many Monday mornings I had prepared the entire weekend for a trial. And either as a prosecutor, you're reaching a deal at the last minute on Monday morning, or as a public defender or defense counsel in private practice, you get a great deal on Monday morning, and you prepped all weekend. You were rearing and ready to go. So I couldn't tell you how many I prepped for a jury trial.
And I know you indicated that you are a certified expert with respect to the marital and family law. What other practice areas besides criminal defense and family law have you practiced in?
Well, as I said, it's mainly family and criminal, but I was assigned to the juvenile division when I was a public defender. I've handled juvenile cases in private practice. I accepted court-appointed dependency cases earlier in practice, and I actually have a few dependency cases that I've done in private practice as well, but most people in dependency cases cannot afford to hire private counsel. I've had some cases in civil, but that's not the primary area of my practice. I do mediation as well. I'm a Supreme Court certified family law mediator. I'm also trained in collaborative divorce, but I started out my solo practice solely doing criminal defense because that was my experience. Well, let me not solely, primarily, because when you start out in your own office, you'll take everything that walks in the door. But eventually I became board certified in marital and family law. So that is primarily my practice now. Still handle a few criminal cases now and then, but it's mainly family law and family mediation.
And now, how have you adjusted to working from home and or Zoom court, or what will soon be known as Zoom rooms at the jail? How have you adjusted to that?
Well, it's been an adjustment for all of us. At the beginning, it really was kind of just a shock. I mean, one day life is normal and the next day we're home. The nice part of being home was getting to spend some more time with family. Now, in my office downtown, it's the bottom, the floor that I'm on. It's myself and my assistant. So my assistant was going into the office. I was doing some work at home, but then I would come into the office and we social distance from each other. I've conducted mediations on Zoom, and the clients and the participants actually like it because they don't have to drive and take time to drive. And the lawyers like it because if you're caucusing with one side in the mediation, the lawyer on the other side, he sometimes, if he's in his office or she's in her office, they can get some work done, and it saves the client money. With regard to Zoom hearings, especially like a case management conference in family law, the client doesn't have to drive downtown, find a parking spot, and the lawyers, if you calculate the hourly rate of each lawyer for a case management conference and how much it costs for that, the clients are saving substantial amount of money. I've spoken with several judges, including Chief Judge Ficarota a few weeks ago, about how things are going, and we're going to see Zoom as part of the future, even when things get back to a semblance of normal.
Because is that your position? Is that you? Okay, is that something that you intend, if you are elected, to keep Zoom on as a way of doing business now in the?
Yes, especially for status conferences and uniform motion calendar hearings. If we're talking about a trial, I still think we need to be in the courtroom for a trial, because I think it's important when you're judging the credibility of a witness, you want to be looking at them. I do know that at least with the family law judges, they are having some evidentiary hearings, and I've talked to some of my colleagues about the experience. There's a division of opinion. Some like it, some don't. My initial position would be, assuming if we're still in the same situation now where we're not back to full normal, I would consider having Zoom evidentiary hearings. But if we're relatively normal, I'd want the hearings in the courtroom, but status conferences, I would have no problem being on Zoom. It saves it just because of the cost savings and the convenience to the lawyers.
And so your initial adjustment with Zoom, have you had any opportunities to use any goofy or silly backgrounds? I don't know if you've seen the Tiger King background come through, where people will have, the big Tiger King with Joe Exotic next to them. Have you had any experience with family or friends being able to joke around like that and have a good time?
Well, with regard to family or friends, we've been using the app House Party, which what's nice about it is that we can get 7 or 8 of us on there at one time. What's really nice, I have a niece who's in Israel right now. My daughter was in London for a good part in the coronavirus, but now she's in Miami. My mother, who's 85, even though she's in Tampa, we can't, I go over and visit, but I stay outside in front of the house and she stays at the doorway. So all of us are getting on House Party, and they have trivia. So we're on there and trivia questions are popping up, and it's like a contest. They keep track on the app of who gets the most questions right. So we've had a lot of fun with that. As far as Zoom for meeting with clients, no, I haven't put in a funny background or meetings. I have either just had my name, if it's legally related, if it's a judicial campaign thing, I have Gary Dolgin for judge, and sometimes I'll have my campaign logo in the background in my office, but I'm at home right now. And sometimes I've had the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco because my wife and I honeymooned in San Francisco. And one of my favorite things is walking or biking on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
And I believe just a side note, I believe the Golden Gate Bridge is a standard Zoom background, and it looks like you're floating over the water. That is a funny one also. How much time have you been able to donate time to any pro bono clients or any pro bono legal organizations? And if so, which organizations?
Bay Area Legal Services, I have served as a volunteer mentor for lawyers who don't practice in the area of family law, because there is a huge need, as I'm sure you know, of people who need family law pro bono cases. And so for at least, I would say, the last 15 years, I will take calls from lawyers and I will advise them on their case so that they're able to competently represent pro bono clients. Before coronavirus started, my standard practice would be to sit down at lunch, ask them to bring their pleadings, and I would share with them pleadings and cases that I've had in the past that would help them. And that's been very rewarding. Right now, I'm helping someone pro bono who has a daughter who is dependent, who's over the age of 18 and unfortunately has substantial health issues. And we were able to get her child support past her being 18, but we still have issues with the dad paying on time, and it is challenging when you have a single parent who is unemployed and is taking care of a child who can't take care of themselves. And so that's what I've been doing most recently. I also volunteer for the Florida Bar as a fee arbitrator. I don't know if you're aware, but the Florida Bar has a free consumer program. If you as a lawyer have a fee dispute with your client and both of you agree to submit that dispute to the Florida Bar assigns someone like me as an arbitrator to conduct an evidentiary hearing and to make a decision on whether the client is owed money or the attorney is owed money. And both parties agree that my decision is binding. And so I've really enjoyed that because it's given me a taste of what it's like to be a judge. And that's something that has been very rewarding to me. And sometimes, there are two lawyers involved. Sometimes there's a lawyer representing the client and another lawyer. Sometimes the client is pro se. And I've had some cases where they've given me notebooks of exhibits. So it can be a very complicated matter, or it can be a relatively simple matter. And I think it's a wonderful program of the Florida Bar that instills confidence in our judicial system, in our court system.
Now, and you indicated earlier that if you are elected, you do actually enjoy family law, and that is an area that you would enjoy being assigned to.
That's
which, like you said, is unusual in the judiciary.
Well, that's what I've devoted my career to, and I'm an expert in that area. And one of the things over the years that has happened is that new judges who have never practiced family law get assigned to the family law division. I consider the family law division to be the most important in the court system for the reason that most of the citizens, if they're going to have in contact with our court system, it's typically going to be in family law. Most of our fellow citizens are not getting arrested. Most of them don't have multi-million-dollar lawsuits. But unfortunately, 1 out of every 2 families has a divorce. And when I go out and speak and I say, raise your hand if either you or a close friend or family member has gone through family court, everyone raises their hand. What happens with a brand new judge is that they don't want to make a mistake, so they take a longer period of time to issue their ruling, and it delays things. And then when they finally become experienced and comfortable in family law, then they want to move on somewhere else, and the whole cycle starts back again. Now we're very fortunate that we've had a lot of. If you're a smart and intelligent lawyer, you can pick things up. It's just hard though if you haven't practiced. But we have a lot of dedicated judges in our family law division who work very hard, and it's a pleasure to appear from them. But what I think that I would be able to do is to be ready on day one. And I think that that would be a service to the citizens of Hillsborough County.
And what is a strength that you have that you think would benefit the residents of Hillsborough County if you were elected to be the judge?
Well, in practicing in solo practice for 27 years, for the most part, it has been me and an assistant. That's going to be the same setup in a state judge's office, me and a judicial assistant. Of course, we'll have the benefit of having some lawyers who are employed that assist the judges with research. But I have run a successful solo law practice for 27 years. I started with 0 clients. I came out of the public defender's office, and unlike being at another private firm, there were no clients to bring with me from the public defender's office if I expected to be paid. In fact, one of the first people that called me, and I did end up representing her, was a woman who I represented in a DUI in the public defender's office. And she was convicted of DUI when I represented her, but then we appealed and we got the conviction reversed because my opponent, a young prosecutor, broke the golden rule and commented on her right to remain silent, got the conviction reversed, and so I represented her and got her a reckless. So it was nice to be able to do that. But I have built up my practice over 27 years, and so I think that strength and that ability to be efficient and to be on top of things and be organized will benefit. I'll be able to bring that skill set to in being a judge.
And what is the last continuing legal education course that you completed?
It was mediation. I got a bunch of mediation tapes because I renewed my certification this year. And I was signed up to go to there was a matrimonial family law event that was in May, but they canceled the live seminar because of coronavirus, and it was just going to be on virtual. And I didn't want to do that virtually. That's the type of seminar that I like to go to live. But I did several hours of mediation, which I really enjoy. You have to, it's mediation ethics, mediation diversity, mediation with domestic violence cases, which has been a passion of mine, and because you need a certain number of credits to renew your mediation certification every 2 years. So I've had to renew my board certification every 5 years. Been board certified since 2000, and I've been a certified mediator since, I believe, 2004. It may even be 2002. I'm not sure. But some people don't know. If people out there who are not lawyers, they might not know what board certification is and what you need to become board certified. At the time that I became board certified, you had to have a minimum of 10 trials. You had to have had a minimum of an additional 15 that you had prepared for trial. You went through a peer review where judges who you tried cases in front of and opposing counsel submitted evaluations of you, which were confidential evaluations. And then they would be asked by the bar, please send us 3 other lawyers that you know that may have information about this lawyer. And they say the same thing to judges. And then you had to have 75 hours of advanced CLE over the 5 years. You had to devote your time to practicing family law. And you had, the hardest thing was passing a written examination, which was 8 hours, and not just multiple choice and true false, but essay. And I took about 2 weeks out of my practice to study for that. And I felt like that's been the smartest I've ever been after taking those 2 weeks. And I was one of only 6 lawyers in the state of Florida that year to pass the exam. And whenever I talk to someone who's just recently become board certified and I encourage them, I tell them, you are now the smartest family lawyer in this county because you just studied for that exam, and that is a hard exam to pass. But I'm very proud of that because it's not something that you're required to do, but I think it sets you apart. When I appear in front of judges, they know that I know what I'm talking about. When I deal with opposing lawyers and clients like it. And I think that it's important. Only 7% of lawyers in the state of Florida have achieved board certification. And in addition to that, I'm proud that although it's not as extensive to be designated, I've been designated as a super lawyer in the area of family law. They didn't make us take an exam
now. Haiti, do you have any follow-up questions?
I don't. I just want to kind of inform the voters. So when should they be looking out to get absentee ballots? Let's inform the voters. When's the election day for
the election date is August 18th, which is the same day as the primary elections. What people need to know, especially those who are no party affiliation, is that they can vote for judges and school board members because those are nonpartisan races. You can contact the Supervisor of Elections office, votehillsborough.org, to request a ballot by mail, especially if you're concerned because of coronavirus of going to vote in person. Those ballots are going to be mailed, I believe, the first week of July. And you can also vote early at libraries across Hillsborough County starting 2 weeks before the election from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. And of course, you can vote election day. And what people also need to know is that if a candidate does not get more than 50% of the vote, then the top 2 advance to November, the same day as the presidential election. So many people do not know who the judicial candidates are. So Haiti, that's why you're performing such a valuable service, and especially when you're nonpartisan, because a lot of people vote based on their party affiliation. So it's important for people to hear the experience and the qualifications of the judicial candidates. And you can go on my website, garydolgin.com, to learn more about me. One of the things that I'm most proud about is that I've dedicated my career to helping reunite wrongfully abducted children with their parents. And one of on my website is a video by one of my former clients named Tara. I helped rescue her children when her suicidal husband kidnapped them. And that was one of the most rewarding experiences to be able to get those kids safely back from out of state when they were held on a desolate farm by a suicidal husband who eventually did kill himself on my client's birthday. It was his last act of domestic violence towards her. And I had to break the news to her, but she managed to raise her girls successfully as a single mother. She's now a vice president at Citibank. Her kids are honors graduates from the University of Florida, where I went to law school. And they are doing well. And she is campaigning for me now, which I'm honored. And she talks about how her life could have ended up differently. And so I really believe that judges and lawyers have the opportunity to sometimes literally save lives. And I have enjoyed having clients like her. And the judge in that case, who was Judge Rex Barbas, he deserves credit because when he saw my emergency injunction, he put it on the top of his file and he knew it was urgent. And my hope and my intention is, as a judge, I'm going to be able to know when something's urgent so that when the next Tara comes along, she and her children are going to be protected.
So I'm gonna just give you one final moment to address the electorate.
I appreciate the time, Haiti, that you've given to me today, and Michelle, I appreciate your time as well. Again, this is an important election because if you think about it, what other position on the ballot are you giving an individual the authority to literally make life and death decisions? A circuit court judge has the authority to sentence someone to death. A circuit court judge has the authority to take your kids away from you, to take your house away from you, to take your money away from you. And on the other hand, protect you as a victim of domestic violence. And so you want to be choosing someone who has the appropriate experience and background and temperament to be an excellent judge. There are some judges out there who are very smart, but if they don't have the temperament where it's a stressful situation in court. And I think it's important that a judge has the ability to put the litigants and the lawyers at ease. Believe it or not, lawyers are still nervous when they go into court.
It's a responsibility and obligation under the canons that govern judges. They're supposed to be courteous.
That is correct.
Patient,
that is correct.
So any judge that doesn't comport him or herself based on that standard criteria that they have to adhere to, then that's a problem. I absolutely agree with that. And you're right. Everyone that goes to court, with very rare exception, they're already stressed out enough.
That's right. And even the lawyers are. Even after 30 years of practicing law, I have butterflies when I walk into a courtroom and going to try a case, because I want to do the best that I can for my client. And I've been preparing, and you want to make sure you remember every detail that you want to do in presenting your case. But again, what sets me apart from my opponents is I've been practicing law longer, 30 years. I've had a successful private practice longer, 27 years. I'm the only candidate that's achieved board certification in any area of the law. I'm the only candidate that's been designated a super lawyer. I believe I'm the only candidate who's been both a prosecutor and a public defender. And I think having that experience on both sides, especially as a public defender, we have a lot of judges who are former prosecutors. I think it's good to have both. I think it balances the bench out.
You know what? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's a very important point that I was discussing with a colleague of mine yesterday, I believe. I don't know how it is out in Hillsborough, but out in Pinellas, it seems that all the judges were former prosecutors. So we want to balance that out a little bit better, to have someone that has at least both sides experience.
When I remember in law school, in the criminal law clinic, one weekend we had to prosecute the case, and then we had to take the same facts the following week and defend the case. And a good lawyer needs to be able to analyze both sides of a case, and a judge needs to be able to understand that as well. When you have the experience on both sides, it helps you be a better judge, in my opinion. And going back to what I was saying with regard to what's setting me apart, I believe I'm the only one that the Florida Bar has had author a chapter in one of their CLE publications going on 16 years now. And that's been an honor to be able to do that. And when I've had many new judges who take the family law bench, and they call me and they talk to me about my chapter, and it's something that helps lawyers and judges around the state of Florida. And so that's what sets me apart. And so I would ask everyone, first of all, thank you for listening to me, but please vote for me, and I will make you proud.
Thanks for joining us today, Gary, and go vote August 18th, right? August 18th.
That is correct. Vote.
Yes. And I think having the experience running your own firm is very, very important, to know the demands that are placed on the attorneys.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Some judges, some I have seen that I'm not going to name now, but who came from backgrounds of running their own firm, then all of a sudden they take the bench and they act like they have forgotten how burdensome it is, how hard it is for someone, especially when you're solo, to run a practice. run a
Right.
business, and
Yeah.
be a lawyer. They seem to forget that, but we know who they are.
We do, and running your, as you guys know, running your own solo practice is rewarding because you're your own boss and you control your own destiny, but it's also nerve-wracking because you don't know. One month you could have a great month, and financially another month the phone doesn't ring at all. And at the same time, despite that stress, you've got the stress of handling the most difficult problems. Your client's been arrested and you feel their pain if they're facing a long sentence, or if you're going
It
through a
is
divorce.
stressful, Gary. It is stressful. And here's the thing, there's other variables that impact the ability to move a case in an idealistic world. So sometimes we have to deal with judges that are more concerned about pushing a case along than to taking into consideration and factoring in all the things that might be impeding the ability for that to happen. And it's very frustrating.
You're right. One big example of that in family law is that a lot of times, you have a temporary hearing in family law, and the parties you put the case aside for a little bit because you're letting them cool off, because your hope is that they're gonna settle. What hurts that sometimes is if a judge is pushing the case to trial. Why would you want to push people if they're both in agreement to kind of let things lay low and let them get adjusted to the situation and learn how to get along with each other for the sake of the kids, rather than and let them settle, which is going to have a bigger chance of them getting along with each other in the future than putting them in the adversarial trial situation in 30 days, which is potentially going to leave a bad taste in both of their mouths.
And deplete a lot of funds.
That is true, because the lawyers are asking for a large trial retainer, and sometimes the clients can't afford that. So either the lawyer is going to withdraw from representation, or it's going to cost the client a lot of money, or the lawyer is going to continue with it, and the lawyer is going to take a bath, and it's a lose-lose situation for both client and lawyer. So you're right. Some of the judges understand because they've been there. Others, if they've been a government lawyer, they don't get it because they never had to do it. And then there's some who were private lawyers many years ago and they forget. I don't think the solo ones do, but if you were in a large firm, you might not get it to the same extent. But being a solo lawyer is tough, but I'm glad that I did it. The autonomy that you have is the best thing about it. My dad was a dentist, and so it was just him. So different professions, but that's the one thing he taught me growing up, is that there was nothing better than being his own boss. Nothing better.
Thanks
Well,
for
it was
coming on.
very, very nice getting to know you. Thank you for coming on Florida You Judge today.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Michelle, where's your office?
My office is over off of 7th Avenue in
Okay.
Jefferson, just
Okay.
north of downtown and west of Ybor City.
Do you share space with anyone?
I do. I share space with 6 other attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 6 other attorneys.
Do anyone do family law?
Ed Frisha does.
Okay, yeah, I know him. And were you a prosecutor at the beginning of your career?
I was an assistant public defender at the
Okay.
beginning of my career.
In Hillsborough?
In Hillsborough. And I would have stayed there for forever, but I had student loans from Stetson.
Got it. So you worked for Julie.
I did, yes, and I loved it.
Well, good. That being a public defender was my favorite job, because you're actually representing a client. I'll tell you how I moved from state attorney to public defender. There was a recession when I got out of law school. So my first job was in the Manatee State Attorney's office, but I was commuting from Tampa. Judge Barbara Fleischer, who's now retired, was one of my dad's patients. My dad was a dentist for a lot of judges. So one day she told my dad, "Have your son come visit me at my office." And I told her how I wanted to get a job in the Hillsborough State Attorney's office, but they weren't responding to me. So she said, you know, I usually don't write recommendations, but here's what I can do for you. I'm going to pick up the phone right now. I'm going to call the hiring person in the state attorney's office. This was back in 1990 or 91. And I'm going to see if they're going to hire you or not. I'm not going to tell them to hire you, but I'm going to ask them. And she hung up the phone. She said, they're not going to hire you. Okay. So I said, well, thank you for that. I won't waste my time anymore. And she said, have you ever thought about being a public defender? And I said, no, I kind of see myself as a prosecutor. And she said, I happen to know that Mrs. Lucky, the wife of the elected public defender, is one of your dad's patients also. You should have your dad call Mrs. Lucky to get you a job in the PD's office. I said, that is not my dad's style. He is not the type of person that's going to get on the phone and do that. She goes, well, I'm going to order him to do it. So she ordered my dad to do it. And my dad, I still remember him. I was standing next to him when he called. Judge Lucky answered the phone at home. And he goes, Martha, Dr. Dolgin's on the phone. And my dad was her dentist for like 30 years and took good care of her. And 2 days later, I'm in Judge Lucky's office. He's smoking a cigarette, even though it's a clean air building. And he hired me just because his wife told him to hire me because she had a great dentist. And Judge Fleischer said to me, I only expect one thing from you because of me helping you get this position. When you come into my courtroom, you better be prepared to represent your client. And as long as you do that, I will be happy with you. You may not win the case, and that's okay, as long as you give it your best and you're prepared. And don't be offended if I give your client a harsh sentence if they deserve it. But I also want to see you advocating strongly for them. And so that was just a nice thing that she did for me, because I hadn't
That's a
thought
great
about it.
story, Gary. And aren't you happy that the state attorney's office declined hiring you?
Well, guess what happened? I then volunteered for Judge Harry Coe's campaign for state attorney, and I was one of the top people on his campaign, and he won by 13 votes. So the person who didn't hire me was swept out of office. But all good things in the end. It turns out that his wife was my older brother's 5th grade girlfriend.
Man, the Dolgin family is really connected.
It is.
Even back in the day, geez.
It is a small world. And then
Yeah.
to continue the story, this is inside ball. But when Judge Coe took over, all of they had to do budget cuts because all the prosecutors from the Bill James era had like 6 months of vacation time that was all stored up. And so he was unable to offer me a position right away. So I went out and opened up my own practice. And one day he was trying a case. It was the African-American man that got burnt by these young white supremacists. This is back in 1993. He's picking the jury. He comes down, sees me in the courtroom, sits down next to me, and he says, I'm going to have Betsy, my chief assistant, call you today and offer you a job. And she did. And I went in to see him. I said, Judge, I already opened up my own office. I can't shut that down now. I've been doing well, and I appreciate the offer. And I would have come with you back in January, but I'm not giving this up now. So, but anyway, so little interesting side story.
That was a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Hey. So
yeah, it was.
Anyway.
Thanks for coming on, Gary. Good luck on your race. And
so when will this be up? When will this be up on your site?
It's up now. It'll be up now. It's gonna stay on as a pre-record. Okay.
Perfect. But this extra stuff you're already turned off, I guess, right?
No.
Oh, we've been talking the whole time?
Yes, we've been live, and it's good.
Oh, then I'm glad
it's good. I gave you a moment to wrap up, which turned into a little walk down memory lane. Good for our benefit, because those are wonderful stories. I love history. So
well, it's you always there are certain points in your life where you meet someone and you go in a certain path. It's like, if you meet when you meet your spouse, my wife did say no the first time I asked her out because she was dating the brother of a law school classmate of mine. But then
We're live still, just so you
we're
know.
live still. That's okay. Well, this might be my last story because
Okay.
it's fun. I'm at a party in the summer when I'm clerking for a law firm, and I see one of my classmates, and he's talking to this beautiful young lady. And I go meet my future wife, and it was at a singles party. So I said to her later, "Why do you show up at a singles party with a date? I didn't know you were dating someone." And so a month later, I'm clerking in a law firm, and I get a message that she's called me, and she was saying, "I'm no longer dating that person. Is your offer still open?"
Aw, that's
So
sweet.
as Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said to me, just because a door closes doesn't mean that it won't open in the future. So it's true for your personal life as well as your professional life.
That's true. That's true. Okay, Gary, good
So
talking
long.
to you, and good luck.
Thank you very much.